Hey, hello, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Strategy Show, Sims Edition, 13-game slate, headed into Week 15, coming off a monster Kyle Pitts game. And it appears maybe Mike Evans wasn't a decoy. No, maybe we had guys in here going, hey, I'm X-ray tech. I'm an X-ray tech. He's definitely not right. Hey, there's no way he gets used today. Guy ends up with like 13 targets or something like that. Kyle Pitts is the proof. I mean, look, he was a great play yesterday, but proof that touchdowns are random. You know, like he had one on the entire season, 3 yesterday. Super fun game. Atlanta, once again, under Kirk Cousins, pulls it off back-to-back years on Thursday Night Football. Heck of a way to start off the week, man.
Yeah, other than that, it seems that you may just need Kyle Pitts to advance in best ball. He had like a pretty high advance rate. So
I have a decent amount of him, fortunately, and I didn't have a great advance rate. So like that appears to be my one silver lining.
So it could be the opposite for me. I had a very high advance rate, but very few of those lineups have Kyle Pitts. So a lot of those might just be drawing dead, but I felt pretty good about our show last night, Lough. You and I like the lower owned Mike Evans, who just very clearly reestablished himself as the number one guy in Tampa Bay over Egbuka, over Chris Godwin. So you got Mike Evans, got so many targets. There was no kind of limits there whatsoever. He even took a ridiculously tough hit where Baker, total hospital ball, left him out to get killed. He gets undercut, and I didn't know if he's going to return to the game. You could see him on the sideline. There was one point where they cut to him. He was holding his back, and you could very, very clearly read his lips where he just said, "Oh, fuck me," when he was holding his back. I didn't think Mike Evans was going to come back after that hit.
Well, when I thought he wasn't going to come back was when he grabbed the helmet and pulled the straps off. Fortunately, it wasn't the shoulder, the collarbone.
Yeah.
But Sam Weiss, whoa. Don't you attack my X-ray quote. Sam, I like you. You're a good guy. I see you in here a lot. I am 100% attacking your X-ray quote. It's a bogus statement, man. These are professional football players making millions of dollars a year. This is why, and Sam, I'm not targeting you specifically, but like all of these Twitter fantasy doctors, they don't have a single clue what they're talking about. It's like, all right, sure, you may have been able to diagnose something by watching him hobble off of, like, you know, you have guys out there who are arguing with the actual dads of players, telling the dads who have seen the results on the MRIs that they're wrong. You can talk about the x-rays. We can talk about this. At the end of the day, though, man, like to anybody, these guys have the most qualified, unless of course you're Tyrod Taylor's doctor in Los Angeles. But aside from that, they have some of the most qualified doctors. These guys are coming in for the stretch run of the NFL season. These players, they're not putting him out there if he's like 30%. You know what I mean? You're not bringing him back out unless you intend on using somebody like Mike Evans. Now, clearly he could have been slightly limited. Maybe he was a little bit hindered by that. But we saw some of these ridiculous grabs he made last night. They're not bringing him back after an IR stint, being out since week 7, if he's not somebody that they intend on using. So it's just like, you know, am I Monday morning or Friday morning quarterbacking here a little bit? Maybe, Greg, but this is kind of the same thing I said last night as well. So I'm not really.
If he's less than 100% and he still has 132 receiving yards, isn't that even like more reason to think that how much upside he actually had to? And I don't know what there's nothing I saw last night where I'm like, oh, he's clearly hindered in some kind of way. I personally didn't see that watching the game last night. He had 132 receiving yards. The only reason that he wasn't the highest scoring player on the slate is because Kyle Pitts had one of the best fantasy games of the entire season, 11 catches, 166 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, you just look at what the range of outcomes was for Mike Evans. If you came away from that and said that, like, oh, yeah, I mean, this was just him being limited. Okay, well, what would it have looked like if he wasn't limited and hindered then last night?
Right. It would have looked exactly like that, honestly. It would probably the same thing. AJP, how about Herbert, though? Clearly looked horrible last week. That's totally different, though, man. And you can go back and watch our shows. That's very different. Herbert had a plate and screws inserted into his hands 6 days before the game. That's a little bit different. And you know what, though? While he did not look great throwing the football, Herbert still rushed 10 times for 66 yards in that game. So again, like, you could still lean into the angle of that type of uncertainty. You really don't know. The dude's a dog. He rushed for 66 yards. He took massive, massive hits in that game. I mean, they immediately went and did x-rays on Justin Herbert afterwards and said he's pretty much okay, I think was the quote. So, nice. But nah, it's just, Sam, it's not you. It's just the idea that, like, when we come into this with a preconceived notion that some experience we have, be it as an x-ray tech or watching football or knowing football, every scenario is so much different, man. Everything's different, and everything can result in something you didn't expect. You know why I take this stance? Because I got burned brutally on this last year with Puka Nacua. I really thought there's no way this guy comes right off the IR perfectly fine and just dominates, right? I bet the unders. I was super underweight in DFS. And Greg, I think he had 100 yards in the first quarter. And ever since then, I was like, you know what? These guys are just kind of built different. And if they're returning to the game, remember, he didn't even practice really before coming back. I've taken a very different approach ever since that.
Yeah, Mike Evans had said, or not Mike Evans had said, but they quoted Mike Evans on the broadcast, what he had said to them in an interview, which was that he hadn't actually taken a hit. And what he had been doing to prepare for the game is he had been diving shoulder first onto a mattress. And that was the prep that he was doing for the game. And he felt fine doing that, didn't feel any pain, and felt that he was going to be good on the field. And yeah, the only time that we saw him like actually in pain was because of his back, not the collarbone. And
dude, he got flattened on that. Like, that was he had beat that guy. He had beat the brakes off Bryant all day long. And dude finally got a little bit of revenge. But anyway, glad to have you guys here. We are about 2 weeks out from Christmas. Christmas falls on a Thursday. There's 3 Thursday games too. So nice. 3 Christmas games on a Thursday. Looking forward to that. And we got a fun slate today, so we're going to dive into it. Appreciate you guys hanging out as always. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Who's your favorite stack this week? And is it a single, skinny, double, triple? There are a lot of ways to build unique stacks. I will be getting into some of the ones that I find interesting, maybe a little bit different today. I assume Greg will do the same. And if you missed the single lineup sim show on Wednesday, definitely recommend you go check that out, because that one has done well for us throughout the season. Hopefully it's the same in this one as well. But anyway, let's make it happen. We've got a lot to get into, and we'll talk about the sims. The first thing we should do probably, and you've already got it pulled up, is just take a look at what the sims are giving us for quarterback ownership here, and then work our way backwards.
So what I think is most notable here is that since we did the show Wednesday, we now no longer expect Jaden Daniels to play. We were a little bit more uncertain on Wednesday. He was in our projections, but now we got Mariota in here, and 2 of our 3 most rostered quarterbacks, the Giants-Commanders game. Mariota is showing up the most of any quarterback, and we got Jackson Dart showing up the 3rd most of any quarterback. Both of them fairly cheap. Mariota at $5K, Jackson Dart at $5,600, Lofty. So cheap quarterbacks. And to an extent, Lamar Jackson, at least relative to him, is on the cheaper end as well at $6,400. So our 4 most rostered quarterbacks here, we've got Mariota, Lamar Jackson, Jackson Dart, Sam Darnold, and all of them somewhat on the cheap side, Lamar Jackson being the exception, except relative to him, it's cheap at least.
I like it. We talked about it on Wednesday, when we didn't necessarily know what was going on with Jaden Daniels, that if Mariota starts at, what is he, $5K flat?
Yeah.
I would definitely be interested in something like this, because you've got a cheap Debo, you have a cheap Terry McLaurin, you no longer have Zach Ertz, who tore his ACL, and that is going to play a role here. New York's run defense is not good, but at the same time, the Commanders don't really have a good run offense either. I do like Mariota. He has some rushing upside. His rushing prop is actually pretty nice going into this week. This is the type of game that could be, I like to use the phrase, it's a a stoppable force against the, a stoppable force against a movable object. This is the type of game that could be an ugly 14-10, disgusting game from top to bottom. Or it just turns out that we see a spot where these guys go like 30-27. And if that's the case, I'm interested. You're not paying a premium for any of these guys. I mean, Jackson Dart, in my opinion, probably should be a little bit more expensive than he is, because I do think he rushes a little bit more than he has in that New England game, in his first game removed from a concussion. They're coming off of a bye week also, so he's had more time. $5,600. There's not a single here. You'll find this to be quite interesting. There is not a single player in this entire game, Greg, not a single player that is above 5,900. Not a single 6K player in a game that currently has a total sitting at what, 47.5 or something, 46.5. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and where does that, I'm just pulling up FanDuel right now. Where does that total rank amongst all the other games for the weekend? So you've got Bills Patriots at 49.5. Ravens Bengals is at 51.5. Lions Rams 50. Yes, so this is the game with the fourth highest total of the entire slate.
Yep, with every player sub 6K. Every single one of them. Wan'Dale Robinson, Jackson Dart, McLaurin, Samuel, all of them. It's nuts, man. The question then becomes, do you want to get to any of the running backs? I think it's kind of difficult because you have two legitimate timeshares between Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary, who's been getting a ton of goal line work and red zone work. Chris Rodriguez and Jacory Krosky Merritt. Sorry, I haven't said his name in a while. God, we said his name so often at the beginning of the season, I almost forgot it because we haven't talked about him in so long. He has completely fallen off a cliff. I do not love the backfields here. What I don't love as well is the fact that watch the backfields just dominate this game, and we have none of them, but we've stacked this game.
Yeah. Could end up, well, I would be a little bit surprised if that's the case, just because of what the backfields are for these teams. But I do like both the quarterbacks a good amount, and I'm kind of happy we're getting this amount of exposure to it in the Sims. It looks like a great game to stack for all the reasons that you have mentioned. Does project to be pretty high scoring. All the players are cheap, and the defense have largely been terrible for these teams too. So
that's a good spot. Now, the one that I'm really fascinated by is the Jalen Hurts. Again, I'll go back to the Mike Evans situation or Justin Herbert. And we're all liable to be right or wrong when we make these type of calls. But I do think there is a path here where you have a team in the Philadelphia Eagles, and I know a lot of you guys are going to be on the other side of this one, right? And the Eagles who say, some people are going to say that they think they're just going to try and run the ball a ton. They're 12.5 point, 11.5 point favorites at home. They're going to run the ball a ton with Saquon Barkley after what we saw to Jalen Hurts on Monday night. The 5 turnovers, 4 interceptions, brutal interception to end that game, multiple bad picks. I could see a path where they instead decide to get him right and to get his confidence back up against the pass funnels defense with a terrible secondary in Philadelphia. I see a path where they let Jalen Hurts throw the football at will, and they end up having a massive game through the air. And if that happens to be the case, when you're getting prices on Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith at $5,800 and $6,800 AJ Brown, who has double-digit targets in 3 straight 100-yard games and 3 scores over his last 2, to me, this is just kind of one of those spots that I think will be pretty low owned, and people are not going to want to go to this Eagles team at a lot. Not that people won't get there, but I don't think you're going to see that many people going to the Eagles after what we saw last week, although they are huge favorites, so that could skew it a little bit.
Jalen Hurts, we do have him projected for 4% ownership. It's not a lot. It's not nothing either, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of the, because this goes beyond data to what you were saying before. Like, there's been this bias against the Eagles for the entire season from the public. People just do not like this team. And then coming off that performance from last week, people are asking Sirianni if he might bench Jalen Hurts, which is just an absurd question. But like, this isn't actually, I got a notification from Underdog. What was it? Yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, where it's like Nick Sirianni says he won't bench Jalen Hurts. Like, this is a surprise to people that Jalen Hurts, who is just the MVP of the Super Bowl, that he's not getting.
Right.
When the Eagles have still overall one of the best records in the NFC, despite how they've had, some inconsistencies. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Hurts ends up coming in even like 2% owned, just because there's this narrative that goes beyond what stats could show that I think could influence ownership. So I'm with you. It's hard to feel confident in the Eagles. It wouldn't be like a cash play or anything like that. But in terms of what offenses have the most upside, this is a great get right spot on paper for the Eagles.
Yeah, and I just pulled the ownership up. We have A.J. Brown projected for 8% ownership against the Raiders. We have Devonta Smith projected for 5% ownership, right? And Devonta Smith is just the type of guy who could have 3 straight games where he disappears and then one game where he goes for 150 and 2. So how often is it? And this is not a rhetorical question. I'm actually asking you, and I'm asking you guys in chat. And Tony, that's a good point. Eagles will have the ball the entire game because Las Vegas can't put any drives together. Yeah, unless the Eagles unravel again and Genty and Kenny Pickett go nuts, but it is unlikely. The question I have for you is, when you take a look at this team and the spread, how often is it that you're getting single-digit ownership to the entire team as a 12.5-point favorite?
Yeah. I mean, you also, what is the ownership of some of the other players on the team?
So the only other one to look at would be Saquon Barkley and Goddard.
All right. So are we even getting Barkley 13% owned, and Goddard is he showing up in lineups 4% owned?
None of
them.
I
mean, just across the board. I mean, Barkley share a little bit of ownership. That actually might be how the field gets exposed, because Barkley actually did have a good game last week. So maybe the field does end up, we see like less ownership to the Eagles passing game and maybe a little bit more to Barkley, which I don't even think is crazy if the field wanted to roster Barkley.
I would love that. I would love that to go the opposite direction.
That's, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if come Sunday we see Barkley closer to like 20% owned and then Hurts being even lesser owned. So maybe that could mean that we end up getting leverage on the Eagles passing game too against Barkley.
Yeah, they have a 26-point implied total and nobody's getting to them. So definitely a spot that I would be interested in boosting, no doubt about it. Sam Darnold being another one here. What do you make of that exposure going to Sam Darnold this week? I guess the only concern is that they do just run the ball, but the fact that Charvarius Ward is back on the IR and Sauce Gardner still isn't practicing, their secondary's in some real trouble against JSN and co.
And then also not to mention that we don't know who's starting at quarterback for the Colts unless they made an announcement.
Phillip Rivers is expected to start, but not confirmed.
So also part of that too, though, like Riley Leonard did practice yesterday. So like I don't know. Was that based on the Schefter tweet or something else?
I think no, he's getting the first team reps.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's still so hard for me to know what the Colts quarterback situation is going to be. But that aside, I don't think their offense is going to be any good. I would actually be really surprised if the Colts offense has success this weekend. So with that in mind too, I also think there's a scenario here where if the Colts offense isn't going to be moving the football, you might just constantly see good field position as well.
Right. Which I don't like. Well, I don't love you look at that Seattle game against Minnesota the other week. Max Brosmer constantly turned the ball over, put the Seahawks in good field position, and they didn't really need to do anything. I don't love that. I mean, you could argue the same thing for Philly too, for sure. But I also think Seattle would be a lot higher owned. Look, JSN, I like him. Of course I do. I guess what I'm saying is I don't know how much I like the Seattle stacks. I would almost be more inclined, and I know you guys, you can plug your nose when you hear this because everyone's so fed up with him, and I get that. but I would rather go with some JSN Kenneth Walker builds without Sam Darnold.
I don't know about JSN and Kenneth Walker together without Darnold. Also, Kenneth Walker is also just kind of a hard one for me because I still view him as very much being in a time split with Zach Charbonnet. How much are we getting to him in the Sims? I have a feeling, I am not going to like Kenneth Walker nearly as much as our data does. As far as Seattle goes as a stack, they definitely come with blowout risk, but I like the upside of it. I like Sam Darnold to JSN single stack, something I've been playing a lot this year, though.
Yeah, look, I'm fine with it. I just don't know how much of that I'd rather get over two mobile quarterbacks in Mariota and Jackson Dart. It's tough. At the end of the day, as disappointing as Kenneth Walker has been, he still has a 76.5 yard rushing plus receiving prop, 14.5 rushing attempt prop, and he's minus 130 to score. So at what is he, 5,400 or something? Or 56 or whatever?
5,600.
Yeah. I also think I do not think his ownership will be that high. I actually think it'll come down.
Yeah, there's other guys I prefer. I prefer Woody Marks. We're getting more of Kenneth Walker right now. ETN's another one. We've got ETN projected lower than Kenneth Walker. I feel better about ETN's workload than Kenneth Walker's as well. Who else is priced around here? He's a little bit more expensive, but yeah, there's just a lot of guys in this price range that I don't like. I'm not saying that Kenneth Walker's unplayable. I just don't like him nearly as much as our data does.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, look, the props on him are actually pretty good right now. We'll see where they settle. Bluffy the Vamp, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You gotta say which one of us.
Yeah, which one of us? It could be both for all we know.
Who doesn't? Yeah, maybe it's both of us. Woody Marks got back to a limited practice Thursday. I'll eat the chalk on Woody Marks at that price point. I think it's just really hard to get away from. Nick Chubb still isn't practicing. Woody Marks over the last 5 games is 4th in the entire league in rushing attempts. The only players he's behind are Bijan, James Cook, and Derrick Henry. That's insane. You know, he's 2nd in red zone rushing attempts and 3rd inside the 10. He's minus 150 to score. He has to play. He has to be good. But, Binking says 16 fantasy points equals Woody Marks. So I will say, if we're going to be fair about this, because Woody Marks has gotten volume and hasn't been all that impressive, you have to go back, and I've mentioned this, and at least talk about some of the matchups. He faced Kansas City at Arrowhead last week. He faced the Colts in Indy the week before. He faced Buffalo the week prior to that on Thursday, and you say that's a good matchup. You're right, but if you watch that game, they clearly were trying to go pass heavy out of the gate with Davis Mills just to throw off that Bills defense. I have very little doubt when you throw 9 times to open the game that you're designing this game plan for the Bills to be like, whoa, we didn't expect them to be chucking it with Davis Mills. Tennessee's run defense is not bad. Jeffrey Simmons was back for that game. Then they had Jacksonville, good run defense. They had Denver, San Francisco, Seattle. They've had some really difficult matchups on the ground. So this one against Arizona, 9.5-point home favorites. I do think at the very least, you could argue this is the best matchup Woody Marks has had. Actually, not even argue. This is by far the best matchup he's had since he's taken over as the lead back.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing too, Woody Marks, way more talented than Nick Chubb at this point in their careers. Not obviously like peak Nick Chubb.
No, Nick Chubb was in my opinion, he's one of the best pure rushers ever, except his knees.
Yeah, I mean, he had the terrible knee injury in college, then obviously a couple years ago, his leg turned into like a backwards L with how he got. It's crazy that he even came back to play at all. But equally crazy is that the Texans took so long to give more work to Woody Marks when it's appeared pretty clear that Nick Chubb, even dating back to last year, barely had anything left in the tank. He's averaging, 4 yards per carry this year, 3.3 last year. This is a guy who every single season of his career, when he was in Cleveland before last year, averaged 5+ yards per carry. He's just not that guy anymore. Makes sense. He's had a lot of injuries to this point. But anyway, you got Woody Marks here against Arizona. He's going to be popular. I would be unless something crazy changes, Woody Marks is going to be my most rostered player this weekend.
It feels like he's going to be up there for me too. Ryan Schindler, I think it's Ryan. I always say that. I like the volume for Devin Neal at that price. You know what? I'm with you. Devin Neal's $5,300. You're going to need some salary relief this week. And if it does in fact happen, let's just say that Kenneth Walker and Woody Marks end up being very popular and Devin Neal isn't. I actually think he's a fantastic pivot. You look at the last 2 games without Kamara. Kamara is still not practicing with that MCL strain. And usually those guys are out for a little bit, unless you're DK Metcalf, who came back the next week. But some of these guys, it wasn't Metcalf. He missed a couple. There was one guy that just came right back, which is unusual. He had, 19 rushing attempts last game and 20 touches, 17 touches the game before that. I mean, you've got a guy in Devin Neal, while not on a great offense, only a 2.5-point dog here at home. This team's been looking to play spoiler week in and week out and succeeded last week in that terrible field against the Bucks. 74, 82, and 71% of snaps going to Devin Neal in these last 3 games. I actually don't see anything wrong with it if he really ends up being 7% owned. Actually, I like it.
Yeah. So the one thing that we do have to keep an eye on is, will he play? He's been limited in practice. He's listed as questionable. So that's one definite aspect that we have to think about. But if he is out there, then yeah, I agree with it. The one thing that is kind of weird about Devin Neal is just his complete lack of involvement in the passing game last week, but it came with a little bit better rushing numbers, 70 rushing yards and a touchdown. But a couple weeks ago, he had 7 targets in the passing game against the Falcons. So we do know he has that kind of upside for the passing game work to get upwards of 7 targets. So yeah, if he's going to be single digit owned and he's healthy and good to go, then I think he's a definite viable contrarian running back option.
Yeah, only 1 target last week and 3 the week before that. It's a little strange, but with the lack of targets came 19 rushing attempts, right? So I think there's a difference there. If he ends up playing like a Devon Achane role or some of these other guys who are just out there no matter what, the volume should be there. $5,300. I like it. Do I think his touchdown equity is great? No, not really. I don't, but I still think he's decent. And here, you'd probably agree with me here. If he really ends up being a third of the ownership of Kenneth Walker, who is in a timeshare, that feels like a spot to maybe get a little bit over the field on.
Yeah. I don't really see any massive issues with that. I'm looking through all of the running back exposures. One thing that is pretty interesting to me is that some of the really highly owned guys, at least in our projections right now, Jahmyr Gibbs, Christian McCaffrey, were actually underweight to the field too. Can you remember a time that our sims were getting us underweight to the field to chalky running backs? It almost never happens. I just kind of find that interesting.
Yeah, I guess it's only because we're still getting over the field to 2 cheap chalky running backs. And we're probably getting, if I had to guess, probably a lot of Jamar Chase, Puka Nacua, JSN, and paying up at wide receiver this week. I haven't looked yet, but that would have to be my guess right now because we have cheap quarterbacks for the most part, a lot of Mariota, a lot of Dart, cheap running backs, likely not going to be paying up for Trey McBride, if I had to guess. I want to stick with running backs, but just do me a quick favor and go to wide receivers real quick. See if my theory is correct. Yeah. So there you go. We're paying the premium for Nacua and JSN.
Yeah, 53. And then and we're still getting to, it's a little bit underweight, but we still have 16% of Jamar Chase showing up. So you look at, we got 16% of Chase, 31% of JSN, 53% of Puka Nacua. So yeah, a lot of exposure to the pay up wide receivers. And then some contrarian wide receivers showing up in lineups here as well. Chris Olave. I really, really like getting to Terry McLaurin. We talked about this on Wednesday. But yeah, don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. Was there anything else that I want to talk about at running back before we fully go over to wide receiver?
Yeah, Travis Etienne. That ownership, if I think that comes up. And, you'd have to ask me, well, if you think that comes up, who do you think comes down? Honestly, maybe Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker, but I do think Travis Etienne comes up. And if he doesn't, I really like that spot, man. I don't. It is a phenomenal spot for Travis Etienne. They're 13.5-point home favorites, currently sitting atop the AFC South. Tootin fumbled twice last game and lost one of them. He fumbled twice. He only had 2 carries. Fumbling has been an issue for him going back to college. He fumbled 9 times over his last 2 college seasons. You're talking about somebody that they said left that game to get checked for a concussion and was cleared to return and never returned. Mm-hmm. If you're like, oh, well, he didn't return because they were up a lot on Indy. Yeah, maybe. Or just maybe it was because Travis Etienne has been much better this season. You've harped on it a lot this year that Tootin just hasn't been efficient. He hasn't been very good. Well, when you combine inefficiency with being prone to turnovers, that makes this even a larger concern. So Etienne, 17.5 rushing attempt prop this week. That seems fair, and I wouldn't be hammering the over. But if he got to 22 carries in this game, it wouldn't shock me at all. I think I'm probably going to put a Sunday prayer parlay together. I do on every Friday where we just go with crazy long odds, right? And I may have like Etienne 2+ 2 touchdowns in there.
Yeah, so the ownership on Etienne, I'm just looking at our total ownership in the data hub and trying to figure out if Etienne's ownership goes up, who comes down. The reality is if you get Etienne to say 15% projected ownership instead of 9, it could just be a lot of other running backs on the slate lose like 1/4 of a percentage of ownership. I don't know that it has to be one guy that kind of dips a lot. I think it can just be incremental, or even some of the lower owned guys, say like, maybe like James Cook isn't 5% owned, or maybe like Judkins isn't 4% owned, and they're like 3 and 4% owned instead. But I do feel pretty good that Etienne's going to be higher owned than 8% as of now.
Agreed. I also think I'll probably still like him though.
Yeah, same. Considering what his workload has been, and then not to revisit the same conversations about Tootin that you just brought up also, but Tootin has sucked this year and he showed no big play upside. Etienne's just way outplaying him, and all these games still matter for the Jaguars too. They're very much in the thick of it.
The only other guy that I'd consider, because I think when I asked myself a theoretical question that chat would ask me, who would come down in ownership, I don't think Genty's going to be almost 10%. Like in my opinion, it seems highly unlikely. And of course, we will refine these ownership projections as we get closer to Sunday. Practice reports are important, and all of these props and everything. There's no way that Ashton Genty pulls more ownership than Travis Etienne. Like I can't see that happening. As a matter of fact, I think he'll be lower owned than Devin Neal as well. If Genty comes in and we're saying on Sunday he's like 5% owned or something, that is a guy that I'd be okay getting a little bit more of, just because they may just try to feed him left and right everywhere. And the Eagles, probably without Jalen Carter again, have been vulnerable there. The problem is the Raiders can't block for shit. But does Genty just get a massive role because they have to? I'll give you a good example. Jonathan Taylor this week. Do you know what his rushing attempts prop is?
It's got to be, considering that we're going to be getting the shittiest quarterback play imaginable out of the Colts. The expectation has to be that Jonathan Taylor touches the ball like 25 times or something like that.
Right.
So I don't know. What is his rushing yard prop? 24.5? What is it?
No, it's 20.5. But you're making all of the right points. The point is that most people would look at that game and go, well, how would he get 21 rushing attempts when they're probably going to be down by so many points? But at the same time, would you rather just keep trying to feed Jonathan Taylor and hope he breaks one, or let Phillip Rivers do the damage? And like you're saying, you just kind of have to give the ball to your best player. Genty hasn't been very good this year, but what are your alternatives? So with that in mind, could there be enough volume for Ashton Genty where at 5,800, he just ends up being a good play and he breaks one. So I don't want to forget about him.
The one thing that is in Genti's favor, coming into the year, there was this idea of not much of a pass catcher because he didn't do it at Boise State. So the idea was he's not going to do it in the NFL, and that's how the season started too. The Raiders even said, they're like, hey, we want to manage his workload, kind of like an NBA player. Like, we don't want to run him into the ground too early or anything like that into his career. But one thing that we've seen over the course of the last month or so, passing game work for Genty in a way that he never got it in college, wasn't getting it at the beginning of the year either. He has 8+ targets in 3 of his last 4 games.
That's crazy.
So this is something that they're doing a lot, is throwing the ball to Genty now. And that was not happening really at all at the start of the year. The first 4 games of the year, he had 2 targets, 4 targets, 0 targets, and 2 targets. He only had through the first 7 games of the year, 1 game with 5 or more targets. And now he's done it in 5 of the last 6 games, or 6 of the last 7. He's had at least 5 targets. So they're clearly upping his pass game work.
Yeah. Now the only question becomes, with Kenny Pickett and not Geno Smith, how much different does that look? But that's a tough question to answer. What I do know is he has a 3.5 receptions prop, juiced -144 to the over on FanDuel, and he has a 16.5 rushing prop. So if you were to say like touches, Greg, you're talking like 20. You're talking 21, 22 touches projected for Ashton Genty in this game at 5,800. Despite their fact that they're big dogs, 21, 22 touches is not nothing.
Yeah, especially if he's going to be able to be getting 5 to 8 targets in the passing game, because those are just more valuable touches than his, normal 2 to 3 yard runs.
Rance, Genty, worst running back play on the slate. He's been in better spots, did nothing. I know you're smarter than that, Rance, because you're in here all the time. I know that's a reactionary take. I know you understand how valuable volume is. And I know that you get, neither Greg or myself are expecting a monster game from Genty, but if he ends up being 5% owned, there's always value in very low ownership if a guy ends up being that low owned with that much volume. And we should not ignore the fact that Philadelphia right now is a team that is really, really, really vulnerable in all aspects, offense and defense. We don't know what the Eagles are. Like, we have no clue what the Eagles are. So, yeah, if he ends up being virtually unowned, then I'll take a shot. But, yeah, the O-line stinks and Genty hasn't been good. Rance, we can 100% agree on that much. Take a look at wide receivers here.
Yep, we touched a little bit on the high-end wideouts, the amount they're showing up in the tools. So a lot of Puka, a lot of JSN. We got a chunk of Jamar Chase as well. As far as the other wide receivers go, some interesting contrarian ones. I love getting to Terry McLaurin. Even with Marcus Mariota at quarterback, I still like Terry McLaurin a lot. We have him for single-digit ownership right now. He's $5,400. The last game that we saw Mariota start, which is only a couple weeks ago, where he started, and then there was no Jaden Daniels. Terry McLaurin was supposed to be limited snaps, limited workload, and he got 14 targets in that game. I think that Marcus Mariota is going to have no issue getting Terry McLaurin volume, and in the game that we've already talked about, has the 4th highest total on the entire slate. Terry McLaurin, contrarian, cheap, $5,400. That's pretty enticing to me.
Yeah, very enticing. But I'll actually go a little contrarian to you here. If Terry McLaurin, because that ownership also, I think, comes up. I think it will. It's a 47-point total, and it's a bunch of teams with no defense. If like, what's Deebo Samuel's ownership right now? That's what I want to know.
Let's see. Deebo, 4% owned. We have him in 4% of lineups.
Okay. Do I like Terry McLaurin more than I like Deebo Samuel? Yes. Do I want to have that big of a discrepancy in exposure between Deebo Samuel and Terry? I don't. I obviously think Terry McLaurin is better than Deebo Samuel. No doubt about that. But I don't think in a game environment like this, where Deebo Samuel's also cheap, that he should be that much lower owned. And there have been some games this year with Marcus Mariota, where he has looked to pepper him in some of these spots. Yes, I absolutely prefer Terry McLaurin, but Debo to me is interesting. By the way, I don't even, this is weird. I feel like I remember every single game I see whenever I look on the box score. I don't remember Washington beating the Chargers 27-10 this year in LA.
The Chargers had some weird losses to NFC East teams.
And except the Eagles.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right.
Yes, the Chargers against the NFC East this year. The Chargers lost to the Giants, lost by 17 at home to the Commanders, and then beat the Eagles. They've got the game against the Dallas Cowboys coming up in a couple weeks. Yeah, totally normal way to play the NFC East. They're going to watch them beat the Cowboys in Dallas, and then the end of the day, they'll be like, yeah, we beat the Eagles and the Cowboys.
Yeah, right.
The Giants and the Commanders.
Yeah, for sure. The whole game is underpriced for the total and matchups on both sides. Is it just being overlooked for the other huge totals? I think both. It's getting some ownership, but I would agree with you that it is underpriced. But let's also not ignore the fact that these are still two bad teams anyway, right? Like these are just still two bad teams. So it's not a guarantee that either of them puts up monster numbers. But we both agree that we like it. You know, hold on a second.
Drama over there. So I'll go over some of the other.
My daughter, she was screaming down the steps, telling me to come up and eat. My 2-year-old, Daddy, eat. Which is very nice. So my wife just made me breakfast.
Oh, nice.
Yes, nice. Very nice.
That'll be the next evolution of your content, as you start eating breakfast on the morning shows every day.
I've thought about, because everyone's asking me what I eat for breakfast. I've thought about starting the show and just like mouth full, like a breakfast burrito. And just the first 10 minutes of the show is me eating and you being repulsed by it.
Yeah, the old O&A, they used to have food delivered from restaurants mostly because they knew it'd piss people off. They get food delivered by restaurants. They would have the restaurants as a sponsor on the show, and they would just talk about how good the food was while they ate on mic. It was an old O&A bit on that one, but I'm for it. But wide receivers here. One thing that is also interesting, Chris Olave, only 4% on, getting him an 18% lineups. Ted McMillan on the other side of the game. So right here, we're getting a little mini game stack that we're getting overweight to the field too. Ted McMillan an 18% of lineups at 10% ownership, and Olave an 18% of lineups, 4% ownership. Panthers, after the Buccaneers lost last night, Panthers are in the driver's seat to win the NFC South now.
I know. It's a terrible back-to-back losses by the Bucs. Terrible. I like McMillan. Yeah, sure. They're coming off a bye. They got their starting center back. They're getting healthy. I like him. Chris Olave being another spot at 18%. If he's really 4% ownership, yeah, Chris Olave looks perfectly fine. But I know he got the best of J.C. Horn last time out. But J.C. Horn fell on a 60-yard touchdown from Chris Olave. I think Olave is really good, but I still hate that matchup. Like not, and also in that game last time out, Chris Olave was like, let's see how expensive he was. No, he was actually the same price. When did his price start coming up? Week 7, because he was 5,100. He was 4,900 in week 2. That's not. He's going to have 1,000-yard season with Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck. Probably like 1,007, which is an amazing year with those quarterbacks. It's really
the most amazing thing, 0 concussions for Chris Olave with the quarterbacks he's had this year. That's ridiculous to me. I would have thought he'd have at least 4 concussions with that quarterback play.
Injuries are so random in this game, man. I hate that whole injury proneness thing. Like Olave hasn't missed a game, right? He hasn't missed a single game. Not a single game. And then there's other guys who never get hurt, who have missed a ton of games. It's just, it's a strange wrinkle in the NFL. So another one, Brandon Smith. I like Nico. And didn't someone else mention him first? John. Hey, John. Nico Collins is in almost all of my lineups right now. I think he smashes the cards. I like Nico a lot this week too. You know, honestly, this is a Houston offense that typically, they struggle in the red zone, and there's a lot of spots that make me uncomfortable with them from week to week. But my God, this Arizona defense is just absolutely god awful, aren't they? And if you talk about Houston, what's their implied total? 26.5 point implied total for the Houston Texans this week. I will happily have some Woody Marks lineups with Nico Collins as well. Typically, that's how I prefer to play these games. If you wanted to stack Collins, Stroud with Collins and like Dalton Schultz or Christian Kirk or something like that, yeah, I suppose that's in play. The only thing I don't like about this team, Greg, outside of Nico, when you talk about the passing game, they have a bunch of guys that they mix in, right? And you're never really going to, on a main slate, be looking to play Xavier Hutchinson or the rookie Jaden Higgins or Christian Kirk or Jalen Knoll. But last game, listen to these splits on snaps. 40%, well, Collins 81%, but Hutchinson 40%, Higgins 60%, Kirk 36%, Jalen Knoll 36%. The week before that, 75% Collins, then 55% Hutchinson, 58 Higgins, 49 Kirk, 24 Jalen Knoll. I don't know if I really want to try and figure that out this week.
Yeah, and the other thing too is you could feel perfectly good about making a CJ Stroud double stack with Nico Collins and Woody Marks. I know we haven't seen massive volume to Woody Marks in the passing game, but it's definitely something he is capable of doing, is being a pass catching back. And he does get some targets. Like he had 3 last week. The other thing too, that I think has kind of hurt his passing game work, the Texans have been rolling lately. They've won 5 games in a row. They haven't been in these game scripts, so they've been trailing and had to throw the football. Now, I don't think that this one profiles necessarily as a game where they're going to have to throw the football either, but it is something where, if needed, you could get 3 to 5 targets out of Woody Marks. So I don't have an issue with CJ Stroud double stacks with Woody Marks and Nico Collins.
I don't hate it. I just don't love it. Like, I don't think I'd prioritize it. I don't think Stroud has to run much here. But yeah, it's not the craziest idea. It's just not one of my favorites. Sandra Whittington Boone, 8205. Can you afford to get away from Chase this week? Yeah, of course. I think Higgins might play, which is just shocking development. I did not think that.
It seems like he is going to.
It does.
The other thing too is people were saying, how is he going to play with the? He was in the concussion protocol. To my knowledge, he was never diagnosed with a concussion though. He was just in the concussion protocol being checked, but I don't think they ever obviously a couple of weeks ago they diagnosed him with a concussion, but I don't think he was diagnosed with one.
If you're in concussion protocol, you have to be diagnosed with one. Because you have to advance through the protocol to get cleared. You have to. Think about it. You can get evaluated for a concussion, but if you're in the protocol, it means you suffered a concussion.
I thought part of it too was just testing to see if you had one. I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. But if you're in protocol, how would that be that you're just, it doesn't matter. You're right. I'm right. Who gives a shit? What matters is that the guy's out there practicing. And if I still don't think he gets cleared, but if he does, I actually would like Jamar Chase more.
So you're saying that are you saying if T. Higgins plays or T. Higgins sits? You like
if T. Higgins plays, I would like Jamar Chase more. Yeah.
For just the purpose of less attention on him on defense or lesser ownership or something else.
Yeah, I mean, when you have to account for a guy like T. Higgins, who, is coming off a huge game last week, at the end of the day, Jamar Chase is still going to be the top target for Joe Burrow. Maybe that didn't materialize last week the way people expected it to, but he still is the top guy. I think his ownership would come down, and yeah, I would absolutely like that spot a lot. I would like it more. Yeah.
So there's per the question we got before is, can you afford to get away from Chase? The reason the answer is yes, primarily for me, is because Puka Nacua and JSN exist on the slate. It doesn't mean that you have to play these guys. You can't play Jamar Chase, but I want to have some amount of exposure to all of them. and you can't have all of them in the same lineups. But as far as the top end wide receivers go, yeah, like if you're not playing Jamar Chase and it's because you're playing JSN or Puka Nacua, totally reasonable for the let's see, who was that question from?
Sandra Whittington, 8205. Whittington Boone.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the reason why. If you play Puka Nacua or JSN, nobody's gonna be like, that guy doesn't have the same upside as Chase. Like, we're getting 16% of Chase in the Sims, but our data does prefer JSN and Puka a little bit more.
I talked about AJ Brown. I like him and Devonta Smith, both of those guys. I'm kind of intrigued by Amon-Ra St. Brown too.
We've got him showing up in 10% of laps with 12% ownership. So one benefit to him compared to Chase and JSN and Puka Nacua, he's certainly lower owned than all of them.
Yeah. That's kind of what it comes down to. And I think he'll be way lower owned than those guys. Any other receivers you want to talk about that we haven't gotten to?
Zay Flowers as well. I like getting to Lamar Jackson this week. I think Zay Flowers is a perfectly reasonable stacking partner with Lamar Jackson, as well as tight ends, Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. But Zay Flowers at 8% ownership against the Bengals at $6,300. That one's also going to be appealing to me. The Eagles pass catchers, Devonta Smith, 6% owned, AJ Brown, 8%. We talked about the Eagles passing game at the top of the show, but I think there's a lot of interesting contrarian wide receivers to get to for the slate. It's hard to find, other than like an ETN at 8% ownership, it's hard to find really contrarian running backs to get to. Wide receiver looks like the most viable position to get contrarian at this slate.
Yeah, one other spot that might be contrarian is Jacoby Myers too, especially if Parker Washington sits again. Jacoby Myers seems to be building a nice rapport with Trevor Lawrence for sure. What do we do with the Jets receivers? I don't want to play the Jets receivers this week. Still no practice for Tyrod Taylor. Still no practice for Justin Fields. I have no interest. I really don't. I mean, if it's Brady Cook out there, I don't see the need to do it. There's cheap running backs. There's great cheap tight ends this week. I think you can find plenty of ways to get different. And yeah, Brady Cook doesn't seem to be the answer. Not against that Jacksonville pass rush.
Yeah, Brady Cook looked terrible against the Dolphins last week. Now, in fairness to him, he didn't really have prep for the game in a significant way, but still, I mean, 14 of 30 passing, 163 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. The Jets offense has already been rough this year. I don't think Brady Cook is making the situation any better.
Me neither. He will make it worse. Tyrod Taylor hadn't even been bad, honestly. So go to the tight end position here again and check this one out. I'm actually looking forward to it because I have not looked at exposures. Before we do, though, just throwing this out there. Greg's got a bunch of bets up on tails. Man, I spend all of Friday digging into props. I love doing that. Usually hit sides earlier in the week. Do a lot of Thursday night football stuff on Thursdays and Mondays. But absolutely love digging into props today and finding everything that we possibly can to throw out there. Everything's free. We have all of this on the picks page too. You know, if you're coming in and you're like, well, you know, I'll follow Laffy and I'll follow Greg, but I would like to follow some other people and see what they've got going on. Well, here's the way to do it, right? You just pop up, go into the free picks page, into the explore page, and here you have it. All of these new ones. And then you have all of this too. Like, you're looking for promos and boosts. You're looking for holiday sales for some of these experts. You're looking for parlays. Boom. Go in there. You find them, the ones you want. Like, I'll go in, I'll look through it. I found Greg's on here the other day. Pop that one up. Boom. Here's one from me. Little SGP for this week. Chiefs -4.5. Kelsey anytime touchdown. You want to tail that? Click tail, find the best odds, click it, add it straight into your bet slip. Go check the leaderboard out. Who's killing it? Who's been hitting on these long shots? Moneyball metrics plus 3,100, right? Who's trending? Who's pulling the most followers recently? All of this stuff allows you to put together a following of people that you want, right? You can see, figure out who's super transparent, tracking all of the results, all of that good stuff. And then once you've curated your feed, I could go in and go, you know what? What does Josh have going on today? All right, 31 minutes ago, he's got a Prize Picks card. Ooh, he went 5-0 on the card. Ooh, okay. See what I'm saying? You should be tailing this stuff. Click tail, load it straight into your card. People always ask, I never see Prize Picks content. Josh has been doing a ton of that. And then all these other sharp guys. Ed Zone's probably my favorite right now. I subscribe to their VIP, by the way. They've got an incredible model. It's a blended model that's fantastic. And their NHL stuff has been awesome. Their NBA stuff. This guy was down 120 units, and he's almost back to break even after he started with them. So make sure you're checking all of these out, man. Some really great stuff. And the app will make it so you'll go, why did I not have the Tails app before? That's what you're gonna ask. You're gonna say, why did I not have the Tails app before? And of course, thank you to all of you guys who have left a rating and a review. If you have a couple minutes throughout the day, you get some time to yourself. Take a minute. It's giving season. Rate the app 5 stars if you love it. Leave us a quick review. It goes a long way, and we appreciate you for all of that. So, yeah, man, I'll have a lot up there. You already do. Decent-sized NBA slate today as well.
And also, Eric is posting Pick'em content as well, in addition to Josh. I think Eric does.
There you go.
One Prize Picks card, one underdog card. He posts every single day. So follow Eric too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at that. This is. By the way, leave us a 5-star review. And Ryan, if you could, please write this as a review for the app. I want to see this show up on the App Store. I want to see somebody go, oh my God, 5 stars, perfect app to score while dumping. There's no higher compliment you could pay to an app in 2025 and into the future than this is what I look at when I shit every day.
Everyone needs a dumping app. You need an app that when you stand up, your legs are so numb, you fall into the wall, right? That's what you need. Don't tell me that's never happened to you before. Using a single lineup sim to build a couple lineups up. You stand up, you go, oh my God, my legs are jello. And you fall right into the washing machine. All right. D-Pack. D-Pack, Morgan hit me up yesterday, said you had a pretty awesome backstory. So go show Morgan some love. He was saying some great things about you. D-Pack just won the Millie, just took down 100K in UFC. He's a sim subscriber. And he's down there, I think, New Orleans, right? For the championship, for the fantasy football championship down there with Morgan. He was saying some great things about you when he DM'd me. He said you had an awesome story. When I win the FFPC, I'll give you all a shout out. Appreciate y'all. I don't want a shout out. I want a super chat. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, absolutely, man.
A Venmo. He wants a Venmo.
Yeah, I want a tip on X. That's what I want. No, congrats though, man. I appreciate you, and you're on a massive heater. It was Morgan. Then it was D-Pack. Let's see a Stokastic avatar take down the championship. Wouldn't that be an awesome way to round out the season? That'd be awesome. All right. Anyway, tight ends before we say goodbye.
Yeah, it's to me, this one's going to be a little bit of a shorter discussion just because there aren't any dominant tight end plays. It's really spread out. We do have 31% of Kittle now. One thing that is interesting here that I think you'll get on board with, Lofty, overweight to both of the Baltimore tight ends in the Sims, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely.
Good. That's I like them both. I do. I don't see why you wouldn't. Mark Andrews, this could be a 2-touchdown game for Mark Andrews as well. It could. He's been pretty non-existent lately. He's been invisible, but do we actually care? I don't. Not against Cincinnati. If you look at truly how bad they've been against tight ends, and now they have to deal with Andrews and Likely, the only downside to this matchup for you, Greg, for me, for everyone listening and chatting after the fact, is that we had to hopefully get this right between Andrews and Likely. And you know what? It might end up being both of them. Who knows? It could be both of them too. So I'm all about it. I like Theo Johnson too. I don't like Harold Fannin as much as the Tools do, but I understand it. And David Njoku might be out. We're getting a lot of George Kittle at 54. The other guy that I'll just throw into the mix, Travis Kelce at sub 5K. I think this could be a real bounce back spot for the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chargers are very good at limiting production to wide receivers. It isn't to say they've been bad against tight ends, but this could be one of those games where Travis Kelce quietly has a solid performance. If he's going to be 3.9% or whatever that says owned, then I'd like to bump him up and not have such a big gap between him and George Kittle. That's where I'm at on tight end.
Yeah, a lot of my tight ends are probably just going to be who correlates with the stacks that I build individually. Yeah, Kelsey's $4,900, Kittle's $5,400. Those are guys who just kind of like stand out to me individually. But some of these other guys, whether it be Andrews and Likely, by the way, totally reasonable, I think, to make a double stack of Lamar Jackson with the two of them, which you were kind of alluding to before, because they're cheap enough, $3,900 and $3,400. If these guys put up 14 and 15 fantasy points at their price points, that's pretty viable. And also, as of right now, there aren't that many great cheap options. So double tight end builds, that'll make a little bit of sense if you're trying to save salary. But yeah, looking at our exposures, I would say also I'm not super high on AJ Barner relative to our projections. I don't know that I want to have 26% of AJ Barner. But yeah, other than that, there are a lot of okay, while not great looking tight end options.
Yep. But there are a few that I like enough to where I don't care all that much. I mean, $3,800 Goddard looks okay too, if he's going to be that low owned.
Yeah.
Peter, what about Waller versus Pitt? That's not on this slate. That's a Monday night game. But I actually think it's fine. If we'll be talking showdown on Monday, and that will come up for sure. All right, last thing before we get out of here. Can we go to lineups and just see where we're at?
Yeah, let's see. So if we go to lineups, our number one overall, the top end ones are pretty spread out in terms of different quarterbacks. But our number one overall sim ROI lineup, it's a Jalen Hurts double stack, then Mariota, then a Stafford double stack, Lamar Jackson double stack, Mariota single, then you got a Darnold triple stack, another Jalen Hurts double stack. But I'll read off the top one. Jalen Hurts, Woody Marks, and Kenneth Walker as the running backs. Then you got Puka Nacua, A.J. Brown, and Devonta Smith. Then it is George Kittle and A.J. Barner for a double tight end lineup. And then the Jets defense. One other thing that stands out here, every single lineup here towards the top, with the exception of this one, it is a double tight end lineup with a tight end in the flex.
Damn. A lot of two tight end lineups.
Yeah.
And I don't dislike it, honestly. But I'm trying to see what is forcing the two tight ends. So, like, for example, Kittle and Barner, but what's forcing the two cheap tight ends, like Mark Andrews and Gesicki? So the third lineup down. Stafford, Nacua, Adams. Okay, so it's a double. That's where a lot of the salary is coming from. But what's weird about this build, Greg, is like Olave is not that expensive. Andrews and Gesicki aren't expensive. Saints aren't expensive. Walker and Woody Marks aren't expensive. We're two tight ending that with basically just three expensive guys. And like Lamar, Etienne, Walker, Nacua, Flowers, Devonta Smith, Harold Fannin. That is a little bit surprising to me that the Sims are forcing in that many two tight end builds when we're really only getting to like one actual or two actual expensive guys in these builds. That I would have thought it would look different.
So it's a couple of things. Number one, the expensive players are more expensive now than they were earlier on in the year. Remember earlier in the year, the most expensive wide receivers, like it wasn't what is Cooper's price this week? 87. He is 87. Earlier on in the year, when you were paying up for him at wide receiver, it wasn't quite that expensive. So there's a few $100s in salary. But then also the value running backs for the slate that we have in lineups, like Kenneth Walker, he's 5,600. Woody Marks is 5,600. It's also not earlier in the year when we were rostering value running backs. They were like in the low 5K or high 4K range. So it's just overall all of those guys being a few $100s more expensive across the table. Like that's where the salary goes. It's just there aren't the as cheap of value options.
Yeah, it makes sense. And one thing to add to that, now that I think about it, we don't seem to have any punt wide receivers being mixed in. Right? Like a lot of times that third receiver in the 3K range frees up a lot. I don't see really any of that in these lineups.
Yeah, I'm looking over them now. Yeah, I don't see it either.
So I guess, yeah, you're right. It's just a combination of factors here, which I don't hate. I do think the 3K tight ends look better than the 3K wide receivers this week, given what we know. Anyway, I guess it's time for us to get out of here, one more thing. I had tweeted this the other day, right? And, we do a lot of talking about everything around here, DFS, parlays, this, that, whatever it may be. The one thing that we don't talk about enough is the success that we've seen people have with Portfolio EV. And when I say that, I mean, we always share screenshots for everything, like for DFS and the success. This guy, Scott, had a $38,000 year. Now, this was in late November. And the one thing that stood out to me so much is how many people try Portfolio EV as kind of like either, and I'm not saying Scott is, but like losing bettors or not understanding how it works. And we're able to bridge the gap for them, to take a rec bettor, a casual bettor, or just a struggling bettor, bridge that gap from not knowing what you're doing to having sharp insights, while at the same time not sacrificing any of those profits. And what I mean by that is the bets are flowing in every single day. You could still just blindly bet on healthy accounts and profit, right? But as you do that, you're learning more about what makes you a smart bettor. And the amount of people that I know, that I still talk to, who started off as super casual bettors using Portfolio EV, Greg, and now have actually advanced past Portfolio EV because of what they learned about the betting space and how they profited from Portfolio EV, to now they have everything they've ever asked for betting, and they all learned it through the tools while profiting along the way. I think that's probably the greatest endorsement you can make for a tool like that for someone who's struggling or doesn't really understand the betting space and is getting taken advantage of by this predatory behavior from all of the sports books.
Yeah, and I use these tools. If you guys see the bets that I post to Tails, all of those bets, other than like the parlays, but when I just post the bets from the bankroll content with the dollar amount, all those are coming from the Portfolio EV tools. And it's something that even if you don't have very much knowledge about the NBA, if you know a lot, like, yeah, you could vet the bets a little bit, but if you know nothing and you just tail all of the bets that come through, you would still be expected to be profitable. And the tools are recommended. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it's tens of thousands of bets over the course of the year for basketball.
Yeah. So check it out, man. Your first week of Portfolio EV is free. If anyone hasn't tried it yet, you're zero cost to you. And when I say zero risk, I mean, like, you don't pay a single cent to us for your first week. You get to try it out and see how you like it for yourself. And we're always available if you have questions. Link is down there in the description. Get OddsShopper Portfolio EV. First week, you don't pay a cent for it. The entirety of the week is free. So come check that out and hit us up if you're wondering how to use it. We're happy to help you out. Aside from that, we will catch you guys back here Sunday. Of course, NBA Live Before Lock Deeper Dive tonight as well. And I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend if I don't see you on Sunday. Bye-bye.